we may need to reconsider what we've been told and what we think we've seen. For example, instead of thinking that the Egyptians put the causeway at an angle because the Sphinx was in the way, we could consider another reason. At summer solstice, the sun rises along the causeway in front of the Great Pyramid and moves across the sky, setting between the second and the Great Pyramid, making it hotter in summer. In the winter, the sun rises in line with the Grand Causeway by the Second Pyramid and sets between the second and third pyramids, making a short trajectory, resulting in cooler weather. It appears that the causeways are deliberately pointing towards the rising sun on the summer and winter solstices. Orthodox Egyptologists insist that the pyramids were tombs.
Of all of the wild theories floating around the pyramids, the actual wildest is the one that's accepted without question by all Egyptologists, which is that the pyramids served as tombs.
All of those concepts about it being a tomb are nonsense.
Of all of the theories for which there's zero evidence, that one has zero squared evidence.
In fact, I don't even think there's good evidence that it ever was a tomb for any pharaoh whatsoever.
I mean, it's obvious. We don't find mummies in the pyramids.
There's no question you can bring up about Egypt that isn't debatable. The Egyptians themselves, in at least one stone tablet and one papyrus, tell the story that ancient Egypt is much, much older than the Egyptologists think it is.
Where the Great Pyramid sits, I believe, is on a much more ancient site. Under the Great Pyramid to this day is the descending passage in the subterranean chamber. I think there's very good evidence that that was carved out in what we would call pre-dynastic times. That goes back to a very ancient date. Based on the hieroglyphics that we have, the second pyramid was in many ways regarded as the primary pyramid on the Giza Plateau. Actually, from many angles on the Giza Plateau, the second pyramid is dominant. The structure underneath it, or the base of it, was older than even the Great Pyramid. There was a platform-type structure where the second pyramid is now.
You can see from the platform that it's larger than the pyramid, suggesting there was once something else there.
Around the base is a ring of granite, red granite, and at least from what I've seen in Egypt, this is something that was often used around the bases or on structures when they were renewing them, they were refurbishing them, they were taking older structures, re-energizing them, rebuilding them.
It's demonstrable in that the second pyramid is very definitely built in at least 2 stages, the third built in 2 or more stages. I mean, we really don't at the moment have anything to even provisionally to date them with. With the Sphinx we do.
Looking at the weathering on the Sphinx and the Sphinx enclosure, that weathering was clearly formed by runoff from rain, from precipitation.
We have the severe weathering, which 99% of the geologists of the world who've heard our evidence concur that it is indeed water weathering and precipitation induced. So it has to have been done by heavy rainfalls in the distant past, and the question then is, how distant was that past?
That runoff is coming from up on the plateau. Follow up the plateau northwest of the Sphinx, you ultimately hit the Great Pyramid. The natural topography is the water would run down the back of the Sphinx enclosure, and that's where you see the greatest amount of water precipitation weathering. To have that surface hydrology, you need to have the plateau relatively intact. Now, if you look, currently there's a big quarry interrupting the water flow. So we know that the water flow that was causing that weathering had to occur before that quarry existed. That quarry is well known Egyptologically by inscriptions, etc. That was a quarry that was used when the Great Pyramid was built. So that means that the Sphinx must have been carved earlier. The water was still running off, running down the back of the enclosure wall and causing that weathering before that quarry was a quarry, which means that occurs before the Great Pyramid was built. Basically, we have right there disrupted the traditional chronology.
Even Egyptologists agree that the Giza Plateau has a unified ground plan. How does the Great Pyramid display evidence of this correlation?
I do think when it was what we would call partially built, it was used as an astronomical observatory. The Grand Gallery, perfectly aligned north-south, opening to the southern sky, would have made a wonderful observational tube, essentially, looking up into the sky.
We have shafts pointing to certain stars, Orion's Belt series. We know the stars because they're mentioned in the text. We therefore can use precession astronomy to place the stars back in alignment with these monuments, in this case the pyramids, for example.
The Great Pyramid stands exactly at the center of the largest land mass on the planet. Yet, we had no idea of the position of continents until 600 years ago. How could they have known?
I've shown that Giza, if interpreted as being Orion's belt counterpart, then the layout of the three pyramids, as they are to the ground meridian, would fit a celestial meridian of these stars at 10,500 BC. They reached the very lowest point in their up and down move. Looking east, you had the Sphinx looking at the constellation of Leo. So you have two major monuments on the same site, looking at constellations that are representative of these features on the ground in the sky. We have evidence that they did it, and the alignments were there. Now, could the pyramid builders have been aware of these alignments? Or why not?
With this evidence, it would seem that it's time to rethink what we've been told.
Here we are at Abu Ghraib. You can see that there's no road, no ticket booth, no nothing. This is a very isolated area. And we're going to walk through a mango grove. If you were to get on a camel and ride south from Giza Plateau, you'd come up over the sand dune and see these other pyramids. So as we approach up here, you see a pile of rubble, but really what it is the base of the largest obelisk that ever was in Egypt. Well, here we come up to the platform of the crystal altar. You can see that it's made of quartz, if you look up close here. These little bits of crystal are coming right off it. And then we have a laser cut 6-foot circle in the middle. And then these points, these huge slabs, these pointing to the 4 cardinal directions, made out of single solid pieces of quartz. So here we have some stone basins that were found by Sir Walter Emery years and years ago, and the Department of Antiquities lined all these up with the idea of maybe bringing them to the museum, and they really didn't know what to call them or what they were. So they just decided to leave them here, and they've been here ever since. But if you look at the features on these, they're actually made out of quartz crystal. We'll look up close at some of the places, but when there's little fragments that break off, It's actually a hunk of quartz. And there are these little holes inside, and they say that they were for animal sacrifices and the blood would drip through. I don't know. I really don't think that's what happened. No one has ever come up with a theory that satisfies me about what they're for.